Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I think I'd like to talk about some of the commonalities in the relationship between the United States and Israel, and the United States and Ukraine, and the overall dynamics. Let's talk. Hi, Garland here, and we're going to talk about. I think that's something just to look at as a an exercise, and that is the commonalities between the two conflicts. The one common factor is the U.S. empire. But let's start talking about the commonalities. Let's look at these two conflicts because I think there's a lot to be learned here. What? I don't know, but we'll talk about it together. And yeah, some people are putting Time Wizard. Yeah, I put this thing out for 920 and then changed it back to 840 and 820 all over the creation, all over creation. But at any rate, here we are now. Sound okay, everybody? Hope the sound's all right. I don't know what the hell. But okay. So let's start here. Both conflicts at this point, where are we now at this point? Both conflicts are nations that the United States, okay, great, sounds good. That the U.S. fully funds their war effort, shall we say, right? It's paying for, as in Ukraine, right? Ukraine basically, due to the conflict, has virtually no economy, and they have their young men, a lot of the people who would be working age, working class, etc. Now even the middle age and old men are on the battlefield, or dying on the battlefield, or dead on the battlefield, so they don't have the wherewithal to field the working class people that they need to run their economy. So therefore, the United States is paying for everything. That's going to run out soon, but the United States is paying for everything: pensions, salaries, soldier salaries, you name it, and fully providing them with their with all of their military gear. Right? Okay. Let's look at Israel. Isn't it interesting? Same thing. The Israeli economy has basically come to a screeching halt. They've taken a lot of the young men and women, in the case of Israel. Wait, well, actually, come to think of it, both of them are using men and women, aren't they? So they've taken a lot of the young men and women out of the workforce and put them into the military, and they're out fighting and dying on the battlefield. So we got two things that are exactly the same, and the United States is paying everything now. For Israel, the U.S. is paying everything. Yeah, Israel has no economy. No, I mean, people are like, hey, I think it costs $300 million a day. I've read figures around $300 million a day for the Israelis' nonstop attacks on Gaza. Every dime of it's coming out of our pockets, right? It's either being coming out of the U.S. Treasury, or it's being printed, whatever the case. And if it's being printed, that means not only will we pay for it now, that means that in the long run we're going to have to pay the interest on it. But there's something to be said for the old saying that unpayable debts don't get paid. So our interest, we're building an unpayable debt. So that unpayable debt will never be paid, because that's why they call them unpayable debts, right? But we're continuing to build our unpayable debt and destroy our collective credit rating in the world, right? So we got two countries. We're paying for everything for both of them. One of them, and here's what's happening with Ukraine: one of them's running out of time, and the other one is still rolling along. So we're going to apparently stop paying Ukraine's bills, but we shall see on that. Now let's talk about the overall something that I think is important to, even maybe this should be at the end, but let's start with this. I had I'll say a friend who, when we were younger, He's out and about, he's drinking, he's partying, he's spending all of his money up, he's doing everything he's big enough to do, right? He's up to no good. And he meets this girl and they get close. And to be quite frank, she cleaned him up. I know lots of guys have had the experience like that, where you had a friend who was, pretty much no good bastard, and all he did was party and drank all the time. And he met a good woman, and she straightened him out. She got him, from out of the bars, partying every night. She got him home. She got him to getting a good, working better, going to college, and got himself a good job. And before you know it, he's buying a house and he's being a responsible person, right? So basically, he was out there, going nowhere, as many young men are. And he meets a nice young lady. And luckily for him, she was a good person. And they're together to this day. And she got his ass in line. Thank God. That's the only thing that got him in line. At that time, back then, we're like, hey, nothing going to straighten this guy out. All he wants to do is party all the time. Just goes to show, he meets a nice girl. She gets him straight. Boom, he's good to go, right? And he's, had kids, living a nice life. He's a little older than me. A stable life, etc. So at any rate, and became a responsible citizen. Happy to see, right? Why do I say all that? Because if someone comes into your life, how do you judge whether that person is good for you? By the outcome. Haven't we also known people who met somebody? I knew someone. Let me give another good analogy. I remember when I was when I first started, I was in law enforcement, and I was like in my early 20s. I was young, very, very young. I might have been 19 or 20. I might even been a cadet. And there was a girl that worked down in the at the building I was at. There was a girl that worked in the mail room, right? And she was a pretty nice looking girl. And we talked a little bit. She had some interest. I had some interest. Things didn't really work out. But here's the bottom line. Eventually, my understanding is she had a brother, and her brother moved in, and her brother was up to no good, and he was selling drugs. Bottom line is, just dragged her life down to nothing, and she ended up life destroyed, right? So he came into her life went down to nothing, right? And again, what am I saying all that stuff for? To make some sense out of it. We all know people like that. Because when someone comes into your life, you can literally judge whether your life got better or worse. If you start dating somebody, if you bring in a tenant, whatever the case may be, right? You get a friend and you start hanging out with the friend, right? We've all had people who start hanging out with a friend, and the friend get somebody into drugs, get somebody into drinking too much, and makes their life worse off than it was. So when someone comes into your life, the question is, you can look back a month later, 6 months later, a year later, or sometimes your friend's family member can say, you've heard this, stop hanging around with that guy, he's no good for you. That friend is, they're going to lead you down the path of destruction. And we know that kind of stuff, right? And we all know that. We see that in our real lives and our family lives and all that stuff. Everybody sees that, no matter what country you're in, your age, race, whatever. We all know that story about people who meet people or bring people into their lives, and you look later and you say that person improved your life or that person made your life worse off, right? Why do I say all of that? In the context of Israel and Ukraine. The United States came into Ukraine's life, right? Came into their life. Oh, you got money for you. Oh, man, you guys look like you got a big, scary neighbor. Why don't we give you some weapons? Why don't we give you some training? Why don't we give you some this? Why don't we give you some that? Man, we're going to help you out, dude. We're here to make your life better, right? Israel, we've got to protect you guys, man. The Muslims are out to get you. Everybody's out to get you. Your life is miserable. What is Zionism all about? Right? What is Zionism all about? It's about this. Look, man, you guys, you can't be safe. You got to have your own homeland. You know why you got to have your own homeland? Because you can't be safe in Europe. You can't be safe in the U.S. It's not safe. You're Jewish people, man. There's anti-Semites everywhere. They'll take you out. They'll do you in. They'll tear you to shreds. They'll eat you for dinner, right? You've got to have your own homeland over here where it's safe. So the U.S. and Zionism makes the argument to the Jewish people that the only place safe for them is in the Middle East, in this place that we're going to call Israel, that was Palestine. They put you in there as settlers, and they're going to tell you you're safe. But inherently, as Shahid Bolson always talks about, inherently, aren't they really saying you're not safe here in America and you're not safe in Europe? If you live with me and I say you ain't safe here with me, you need your own homeland, that's kind of an indictment on me, isn't it? Saying, hey, you can't trust me. I'm a anti-Semitic bastard. I'll beat the hell out of you. You better go the hell out of here somewhere where you're safe. In a way, it's kind of getting rid of them, isn't it? Hey, we don't want you here. You ain't safe here. Go elsewhere. Right? So bottom line is the U.S. is telling Ukraine, you're safer with me. We're better off in a relationship with me because Russia's next to you and they're big, bad, and evil. Oh, yeah, Jewish people, Zionists in particular, you're safer over here with me, looking out for you, with me taking care of your security. You'll be safer over there, man. I'm telling you. Now, just like I said, my buddy, right? I can look at him years later and say, he met this woman. She seemed like a nice girl. They got together. Let me look at his life 10, 12, 15 years later and evaluate where he was then and where it is now. Is his life better off, right? I look at it. Yeah, he's got a home. He's got education, a better education. He's got a job. He's got, 2.5 kids in a minivan, whatever, right? He's got a life and he seems stable and he seems happy. His life's better off with her than it was. Man, she really straightened that guy out. I give her a hug. Thank you for straightening my buddy out. He was headed down the path of destruction. Good woman here, right? Great. Hey, buddy, it's 11 o'clock. Hey, man, it's 11 o'clock. You better go home to that woman. Don't you leave that woman. Don't you be standing out here all night. I'm turning around, taking this car, take you home right now. That woman has straightened you out and she's got you on the right road and I ain't trying to screw it up, right? That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Why do I say all that? Let's evaluate the relationship and the dynamics of the relationship with Israel, with Ukraine, from where it was before to where it is today. Is Ukraine better off today than they were before their relationship with the United States? Has the United States improved the dynamics of the U.S.? Have we improved the lot of the lives of the people of Ukraine? Have we improved the lot of the lives of the people of Israel? Who the hell wants to be in Israel or Ukraine right now? Who's like, hey, man, where are you? I'm in Schenectady. I've never been to Schenectady, but that's a funny name. I'm in Schenectady. Okay. And here's a free ticket to Ukraine. Oh, yeah, no thanks, buddy. I'll just pass on that one. All right. You don't want to go to Ukraine. All right. Israel, we're sending you to Jerusalem free of charge. Yeah, no, I think I'll stick around in Schenectady. It's kind of cold, but there ain't no missiles falling, right? The United States, in its relationship with these two countries, has not made their lives better. Both countries, look at them as a result of their relationships with the United States and tell me what has happened to them. Tell me that the people in Israel and the people in Ukraine should look at each other and hug themselves and say, man, I am sure glad we met this guy, Uncle Sam, man. Whew. If we hadn't met him, I don't know what we'd be doing today. Look at Ukraine, 500,000. Anywhere, the numbers we're getting is between 300,000 and 500,000 dead. That means 2.5 minimum, 2.5 to 3.5 amount, as many wounded. Eyes blown out, legs blown off, groins blown off. God only knows what kind of unthinkable thing. The walking wounded, their economy is destroyed, country blown all up, everything. You name it. You name it. Their lives are living hell. And the United States went into Ukraine, and what did they do? What did they do? The most extreme element, right? The Azov Battalion, Svoboda, the right sector, etc., was supported and ended up running the country. If your country is run by the most extreme element, it's going to hell. Now let's observe Israel. Netanyahu is a moderate beside these other clowns, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. He is a moderate. And now, I mean, think about that. Think about the fact that Netanyahu is relatively moderate beside the people in his cabinet. So we see that two countries that once they became entangled with the United States, the most extreme people imaginable came to power, were brought to power. Let me add this. You look at Israel. The last year, the people have been in the streets, haven't they? Why were they in the streets? Because they hated Netanyahu. He is the most corrupt, most hated in my life that I've ever seen, the most hated leader that Israel's ever had. The whole country's been in the street for the last year saying we want to get rid of him. They hate him to this day. They despise him. They blame him for their misery, but they ought to look past him to Uncle Sam for their misery. Yes. Yes. Are they living in misery in Israel? Yes, they are. Their country's a war zone. A war zone. And why is Netanyahu, how can he maintain power? The United States empire. The U.S. empire keeps this man in power. The people hate him. He is so corrupt that if he were not the prime minister, he'd be in jail. Now, let me compare him. He's extremely corrupt, terribly corrupt guy. In fact, a lot of corruption at the top of the Israeli leadership, right? What a corrupt leader he would be. Now, let's look at the leader of Ukraine. Is he corrupt? Zelensky? There were numerous articles that came out. Seymour Hersh wrote an article that literally said that the head of the CIA, William Burns, went to Kiev to tell their leader Zelensky that he had stolen 400 million. And basically, I'm paraphrasing now, you're taking more than your fair share, dude. More than your fair share. Who thinks for one second that if in the unlikely event that Zelensky survives this, that he's going to retire to the outskirts of Kiev? That son of a gun is going straight to Miami, to a gated community in Miami. He'll be living up the street from Juan Guaido, who teaches at Florida International University. Am I lying? Who watching this right now? If Zelensky survives, who here thinks that he'll retire in Ukraine? No, he won't. He will be where his masters prepared a bed for him. He will be with his corrupt hundreds of millions of dollars, the fortune that he will be allowed to keep. He will be in South Florida. And where you think Netanyahu? You think Netanyahu's going to retire and they'll kill him? The people hate him. I'll tell you right now, if Netanyahu retires, he's getting the hell out of Israel. It'll be in the community. Will be Juan Guaido next door to Zelensky, next door to Netanyahu. That's what we're looking at. Somebody tell me I'm lying. Oh no, there's no possibility. He may maybe the south of France for some of these guys. Actually, they'll have a villa in France and one in good old sunny South Florida. And everybody watching me knows I'm telling the truth. And that somebody called Zelensky shoe shine boy. Yep, shoe shine boy Zelensky will be right there with his hundreds of millions of pilfered gain. So here's my point. Israel and Ukraine, both unthinkably corrupt leaders, both of them no ties to Israel. They don't give a damn about Israel. They're looking out for themselves. And both of them, if they get the opportunity to get out of there alive, is going to go somewhere nice and sunny. And the people in their countries will be living in a living hell. Right or wrong? Now let's continue this. The extremists, shall we say, in Ukraine, right? They are ethno-fascists. Now, oddly enough, they got something that I saw when I was a kid growing up in the United States. I like to be straightforward. It is what it is. Like it, don't like it. This is reality. This is reality. I don't care if anybody likes it. I'm going to tell you the truth. So when I was growing up in the United States in my young years, very, very prejudiced place, very prejudiced area, very prejudiced country. And a lot of black kids back then, because it was so much of an apartheid country, and you were put upon to be black, right? Black people were put down, right, in this country. And something that was common, a lot of people don't even talk about it. Black people would say, "Oh, I'm half Indian. I'm part Indian," meaning Native American, right? "Oh, I'm not all black. I'm half Native American. I'm part Native American." Oh, a lot of us were, and some of us weren't, right? But I always got the feeling that because it was such a racist area, such an apartheid country at that time, that a lot of Black people felt like, I don't feel good about being Black. So I'm going to try to like claim I'm something else. So I'll say I'm part Indian, I'm part something or other, anything but I'm not 100% Black, because it was like in America, you've probably heard the history that was like, one drop of Black blood meant you were a Black person. And it was like trying, I think there were people without knowing they were doing it because they were children, trying to push back against the trope that, hey, you're just another little Black kid, you're just another little N-word, you're going to be put down, right? And so they would try to, that was not uncommon. Oh, I'm part Indian, I'm part whatever, right? Mexican, anything, but all Black, right? Okay. It is a self-hatred kind of thing. I guarantee you there are people from other parts of the world and other parts of the country who are watching this, who've seen that kind of stuff too, where the people who were members of a particular ethnic minority that were put upon would say, oh no, I'm part something else, right? Okay, why do I say that? I'm going somewhere with this. Look, the Ukrainians are Slavic people. They're Slavic people, right? But one of the things that's interesting that happened in Ukraine was that self-hatred, right? So these fascists have that self-hatred in Ukraine. So what they'll say is this: no, 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 I'm not Slavic. And they've got this weird way of kind of, rhetorically tracing their ethnicities to the point where they now believe that they're Aryans. A bunch of Slavic people, you can look at their features, you can see the Slavic features all over them. But because of their self-hatred, the West has taught them to hate their Slavic heritage. They now have to say, we're the real Aryans. We are not only are we Aryans, we're the real Aryans. Therefore, we're going to lead the white race to the world of domination, blah, 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 right? Okay. As stupid as that sounds, the U.S. empire saw that as an opportunity. Said, oh, yeah, you are, man. Hey, you're the real Aryans, dude. So why don't we give you some guns and blah, blah, blah. And of course, being the real Aryans, that means that you are superior to the orcs, right? The Slavic Russians. And you'll easily defeat them in a war because they're inferior. So we're going to arm you and you can defeat the inferior Russians, blah, blah, blah. So they used their self-hatred to draw them into a war against a country that's 28 times bigger. You know what I mean? It's just unbelievable. I don't know if it's 28 times, a lot, might be 28 times, right? So they used their self-hatred and their delusion to convince themselves that they're the real Aryan white people. They use that to convince them to go to war against this gigantic country that never really loses wars. And they're getting their ass kicked as a result. But they use this against them, right? We're superior. And what did the Ukrainians say? And, well, what do you know? We got right here in Donbass in eastern Ukraine some of these lesser ethnic creatures. So we might as well just go ahead and genocide them. And they start throwing, they're trying to kill them every chance they get, trying to genocide them, burn them up in trade union houses if they get a chance to do that, or throw various types of munitions and rounds at them. So they're going to do away with these ethnic lessers. Let's go to Israel for a second. The chosen people. And the Palestinians, who unfortunately for them ain't the chosen people according to the Israelis. My opinion is this is another example of the exact kind of ethno-fascism. In fact, the extremists in Ukraine saw things the same way, so much so that some of them actually said they saw Israel as a model for the way they wanted to do things. Isn't that interesting? And both of these countries are puppets of the U.S., are the right hand and the left hand of the U.S. empire. And they're like, hey, that's a good idea, man. Maybe we can do that with these here orcs, just the same way you guys are doing with the Palestinians. I like that. Let's work. Let's do that. The exact same dynamic. A majority ethnic group who are convinced that they are genetically God-chosen, whatever, to another ethnic group, and seems hell-bent on wiping out that other ethnic group. The exact same dynamic in both countries. And at some point, because they've been convinced that this ethnic group at some point has to go, they made a move on them. Now, How's it working out for Ukraine? They ran smack dab into the Russian Red Army. And I don't know how much you know about history. It ain't never a good idea to run face headlong into the Red Army. Let's just say, and they're like, they've taken some punches. The Red Army bends, but it don't break, right? It's like we used to have a cartoon for these little toys called Weebles, and they were weighted at the bottom, and they were kind of round, and you hit them, and they'd fall over and pop back up. And the advertisement said, "Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down." That's the Red Army. The Red Army wobbles, but it ain't falling down. You're going to hit it. You're going to take some people out. You're going to take out some tanks. You're going to get some victories here and there. But sooner or later, the Red Army's just going to keep coming, and at some point, they're going to end up in your capital. If it's Berlin, if it's Paris, I don't have to guess. I'm telling you where the Red Army is going to end up in Kiev, because the Red Army always ends up in Kiev. They end up in Paris. Oh well, hey, Hitler, let's take them out. They're putting up a flag in Berlin. Hey, I got an idea. Napoleon, let's just, wait, whoa, who's this marching down the street, down the Champs-Elysees? It looks like the Red Army. That's the way it works. And I'm telling you, if history is any indicator, and it is, at some point in, what is that, St. George's Square or whatever in Kiev, there'll be some Russian soldiers marching down there, making some borscht and chewing on some cotton potatoes, or what's the other one? Herring in a wool blanket. Isn't that one of the favorite Russian dishes? Slurping on some vodka. You know what? There'll be two Russian guys slurping on some vodka, and one of them will say, "Yeah, man, looks like we won." The other one will look at him and say, "Yeah, unfortunately, we lost the PR Twitter war to the NAFO trolls," and then they'll all laugh it off, and they'll head on up the street and continue to take Kiev. That's the way it works. That's the future for Kiev. It's the past for Paris. It's the past for Berlin, and it is the future for Kiev. It doesn't take Nostradamus to figure out how this one ends, right? But at any rate, people are like, "Hey, where are the Russians going to end up? How far do you think they'll stop? Kherson, Odessa." Ask Napoleon and Hitler where the Russians stop. They always stop. If you kick the Russians, they always stop the same place. They're putting up a flag in your capital. That's how this one ends. Now, let me continue. So, if you look at Israel, you can actually look at that and say, well, it's not Russia, but around Israel is what? And let me add this. Let me add one other thing. The Russians don't want to fight Ukraine. They've always said, we don't want to fight. These are our brothers. These are our Slavic brothers. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people in Ukraine. No, we're not your Slavic brothers. We are Aryan. We're the real Aryan people. And so we got to wipe you guys out and take everything you have because you're inferior. But the Russians have been like, hey, they're our brothers. Can we not fight? And of course, the Svoboda party's like, we must fight and take out the orcs. Okay. Let's look at Israel. Let's face it. Let's be honest. Over history, it ain't been always that great for Jews in the United States. Why? If you look historically, there was racism against Black people. There was a time when, like, your major colleges, 10% max Jews. That was it. You go to Harvard, you go to Yale, you name it. You know what they had? No more than 10% Jewish. I still know. Not far from me, I live in Anne Arundel County. There's a lot of waterfront property here, a lot of big money on the waterfront property. There's an island. It's one of the wealthiest places in the United States. Look it up. It's called Gibson Island. Right straight Mountain Road's near me, right on down Mountain Road. Gibson Island, been on there many times myself. Jews were not allowed. They didn't sell there was lots of money, and people are like, oh, there's a lot of rich Jewish people. Not on Gibson Island. They weren't. Jews were not. They didn't. The people on Gibson Island could not sell their property to somebody who wasn't basically a WASP. In a nutshell, I guess maybe a Catholic, but damn sure not a Black person or a Jew or somebody like that. Wasn't happening. So here in the United States, in Europe, we all know there were areas where wasn't all that healthy and safe for Jewish people. Pogroms, where'd that come from? Not the Middle East. So you have an area of the world, the Middle East, where the Muslims, Jewish people lived there for millennia in peace with the Muslims. The Muslims didn't hate the Jews, had nothing against them. They lived together in peace for millennia. History tells us that, right? There's no denying that. Right now, go to Iran. Very, very large Jewish population in Iran. Ain't hurt nobody. And the Iranians ain't doing nothing to hurt them. There is a history of the Muslim people living, Christians, Jews, Druze, you name it. Now, the United States made up ISIS and these jihadists who may attack some of them. The US created those in Afghanistan, starting with the Mujahideen. But the history of the Muslim people, nah, that was not their flow. They were living with people in peace and harmony, right? Okay. But now what happens? The US says we're going to come in there. And now the Jewish people coming into Palestine are coming as a settler colonist. They're coming doing the bidding of the US. So the US now puts them in as settler colonists. And now this is the late 40s. What else was happening in the late 40s? In the late 40s, the CIA was in Ukraine pushing a clandestine war against the Soviet Union, tens of thousands of people dying. So the US was pushing a clandestine war in Ukraine. And meanwhile, the U.S. was behind the goings on in Palestine as the Israelis, as the Zionists caused all kinds of mayhem there too. The U.S. was involved in all of that crap, right? The West was involved in all of that crap. So you have, whether it's the Muslims in the Middle East or the Russians, you have a large group, a large ethnic, large religious, whatever you want to call it, a large group who says, look, I don't want no trouble with these people. They can live here. We'll all live here. We ain't bothering them. Let's be all right. Let's be cool. We don't need any problem. And the U.S. comes in and stirs up trouble because they wanted the Ukrainians to use them as a policy tool, to use them as a military sledgehammer against the Soviet Union and then ultimately against the Russians. And they wanted to use the Zionists in Israel as what? As a sledgehammer in the Middle East where all the oil was. Russia's got a lot of oil too, don't they? And a lot of natural resources, something in common there. But they wanted to use them as a tool in the Middle East they use the word deter, right? They didn't use it for deter. They wanted to use them to dominate the Muslim and the Arabs and the Persians in the area where all that oil was. They wanted to be able to put military stuff in there so they could attack them, they could strike them, they could bomb them, they could intimidate them, they could use them for intelligence purposes. So Israel is basically a U.S. fort, a U.S. imperial military outpost in the Middle East. What about Ukraine? What's the U.S. do in Ukraine? Started building bases, everything else. So now Ukraine was a U.S. empire military imperial outpost on Russia's border, so they could use it to arm them, so they could use it to harass Russia, intimidate Russia, to surround Russia, to cause trouble with Russia. And the military outpost, Alexander Haig referred to Israel as what? As an unsinkable aircraft carrier. What do you use an aircraft carrier for if you are the U.S. empire? You use that to project military power away from the heart of the empire. The empire is all the way over here. We need to project military power on the other side of the planet. We need an aircraft carrier or an unsinkable aircraft carrier, meaning a vassal state, meaning an imperial military outpost. And what is Taiwan? It's been referred to as the same way. What is Ukraine referred to as an unsinkable aircraft carrier? These things are nothing but imperial military outposts that the U.S. uses to project power. In the context of both of these, they use ethno-fascism. They use an ethnic group that they convince that this ethnic group is genetically superior to another ethnic group in the area that also happens to be a member of the local majority, right? The Russian speakers in Eastern Donbass are members of the Russian diaspora. They're members of the Russian ethnic group. The Palestinians, some of them are Christians, some of them are various different, but the majority of them are Muslims. So they're members of the Muslim society and the Muslim ethnicity, the Muslim religion, the Muslim people. So what they do is they have this ethnic group that is in both countries that are convinced that they are superior to the ethnic minority, but that ethnic minority is part of the local majority. And in fact, the ethnic group that they convince are superior and that must oppress these people are a minority in that region. In that region. And in reality, the United States doesn't like either one of them, can't stand either one of them. The history of the United States is a history of anti-Semitism. The Jewish people, look at the history. There was anti-Semitism in here in the United States. That's nothing. And let me add this. The Zionists who are in the United States, and for those who don't know, there's a large group of Zionists, a huge group. The biggest group of Zionists in the United States aren't Jews. The biggest group of Zionists in the United States are the Southern, mostly Southern, but not completely, Southern conservative Christian Zionists, right? And those Southern conservative Christian Zionists, it's not all Southern, but that's the foundational base of them, right? This particular group of Zionists paradoxically supports Zionism because they believe that the Jews all have to go back to Israel so they can basically be wiped out. That's your buddy. That's your friend. That's your supporters. Hey, man, I support Garland. Why? Because I want Garland to go home. Why? So I can put a bullet in his freaking head and everybody that's dear to him. Ain't much of a friend. No thanks. I ain't hanging around with that dude. And so, ironically, listen to this great irony. The United States says to the Jews, you have to have a homeland. Right? We agree with the Zionists. Jews have to have a homeland in Palestine because they're not safe here in the United States. And the largest group of supporters of that very Zionist policy says, we want the Jews to all go back and be Zionists so they can all get wiped out. It often actually, doesn't it make the argument that you're saying they're not safe here because you want them all dead? Well, you know what? According to the Christian Zionists, not only are they not safe here, they ain't safe there either. Because then you can wipe them all out. And again, I got to give credit to Shahid Bolson on this. He makes this brilliant point. He says, look, these Christian Zionists want to support the Zionists and say, go ahead, and what we want you to do is do ethnic cleansing and wipe out the Palestinians. We're gonna support that. Then God's going to do ethnic cleansing and wipe you out. That's two levels of ethnic cleansing. First, the Palestinians get all dead; they get ethnically cleansed. The Jews all return to Israel, then they get ethnically cleansed, because that's going to bring back Jesus, who is what? What do you call Jesus? You know, it's Christmas. The Prince of Peace then returns after all the ethnic cleansing is done. Hey, the Prince of Peace is going to show up. How twisted and crazy is that? But that's your friends if you're a Zionist. That's your supporters. That's your buddies if you're a Zionist. Now, you can make this argument. The Zionists then would say, and in my opinion, I'm giving you my opinion, this whole thing is my opinion. At that point, the Zionists are like, look, we understand that the Christian Zionists are supporting us because they think we're all going to get wiped out. But we think that's poppycock, or as Joe Biden would say, malarkey. So what we'll do is we'll take their support, and just so we can continue to have Israel, and who gives a rat's ass if they think we're all going to get wiped out by God, because we can't. And it's stupid, but you know, if that's what they got to believe to support us, that's fine. Okay, fine. You can do that. You can say that. But then at some point you have to look in the mirror, because what you have done is given over your so-called security, right? The United States is providing you bombs, it's providing you missiles, it's providing you tanks, it's providing you airplanes, it's providing you helicopters. So the U.S. is providing you all of this stuff. Intelligence, now that you're supposedly at war, There's surprise, and you with actual there. We got soldiers on the ground. We got generals helping direct the war. We got all this stuff, right? But you have turned your security over to people who are only doing that so that ultimately you can get wiped out, and then the Prince of Peace can return. You have turned over your security to people who say you can't stay in this country because it's not safe for you here. You got to have your own land. That's the people that you've turned your security over. And then you wonder why the hell that your country is a pile of black smoke right now. You wonder why the whole entire world despises you. You're being called a fascist. You're being called every name in the book. There's no hope to come back from this. You are hated. And even the companies that do business with you are hated. Companies who do business with you are their stocks are going to hell. Somebody came into a McDonald's in the Middle East with a box of mice and just let them all loose, right? You, not only you, everybody is who's associated with you is hated. And what you have done is turn your security over to people who want to see you wiped out, who are supporting you so that God can come back one day and wipe you all out. And is there any shock that why your country there's missiles coming in from Hezbollah? Their guys are going into the rubble, and every day I'm on Telegram watching videos of your tanks getting blown up, your people getting mowed down by machine gun fire. You're shooting your own hostages, and now people are like in the street saying, hey, why are we killing our own hostages? Your country is a freaking disaster. I'll put it to you like this. If you turn your security over to people who ultimately want to see you wiped out, why the hell would they care if you get wiped out now? What kind of security is that? Hey, Garland, you need security. Oh, there's a guy. Let me check this guy. What's your name? My name's Bill. I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Really, what do you do? Well, we like to hang black people on the weekend. That's kind of what we do. All right. Hey, I got an idea. Do you think you could keep me and my family safe? Sure. Thanks. How stupid would I be? Do you think I'd do that? No, I would not do that. Some guy that says, hey, we like to hang black people. That's what we do on the weekends. Have a picnic, maybe, roast a pig and go hang a black guy. Why don't you hire me for family security, Garland? Good idea. What do you charge? $100 a month. Fair enough. Here's the first month payment. That ain't happening. You know why? Because I realized very quickly that guy doesn't have my best interest at heart. But for some reason, the Zionists are perfectly happy turning their security over to people who want to see them wiped out so we can get a return of, who's returning again? The Prince of Peace. Oh, this whole thing makes a whole hell of a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean, you wouldn't think that somebody would look in Israel, would look at the scenario and say, hey, Saul, come over here a minute. Yeah, I was just looking at this whole thing here, and I'm like, the people that are supposed to be looking out for us and helping us all want to see us dead. Yeah, perhaps they're not. Perhaps maybe they're telling us some things that aren't in our best interest. I don't know. Maybe we should reconsider that. I would think somebody would do that. I don't know if anybody's doing it. I'm just going to throw that suggestion out. If somebody in Israel is listening, you might want to think about that. You might want to think about the fact that a lot of your so-called friends and supporters who have dual citizenship have gotten the hell out and gone back to Brooklyn, Paris, Moscow, wherever the hell. They're out of there. Many hundreds of thousands of Israelis have been like, oh, the bombs are dropping. Yeah. Oh, geez. I got a nice condo in Brooklyn. Think I'll go hang out there. Can you blame them? Of course they're going to do that. And bad news for you, Israel, they ain't coming back. They ain't coming back because it ain't going to get better. Things are not going to get better. So, might I ask, have you been paying attention to what's happening in Ukraine? The people in Ukraine who have money, the rich people, are the hell out of that. They're driving around Berlin in a big black Beamer with blacked out windows. They're anywhere but Kiev, right? So the people with money in Ukraine are long gone, and Zelensky will be following. Trust me, if he lives long enough, he's going to be out of there. But my point being this, I guess it all sums up to this. What we're looking at is two countries that the United States has been cultivating, shall we say, since the 40s, both of them since the 1940s, that now that the US empire is in a world of deep and serious hurt, um, the reality that the US has been cultivating the most extreme policies they possibly could for both countries, which clearly resulted in the most extremist governments that these countries could ever imagine, has exploded into what most people fear in both places could turn into a regional war, right? Aren't the Europeans like, hey, we're afraid this thing could go to bust to hell, and everybody, oh my God, we got World War III in the region. What the hell are we going to do? And what are people saying about in the Middle East? Oh my God, whatever we do, we can't let this thing turn into a regional war. It's the exact same scenario, both places, right? Extreme, extreme, extreme governments who are involved in a war that people are afraid could turn into a regional war, mainly because it's based on ethnic fascism. It's based on an ethnic superiority belief that is fomented by the people on Capitol Hill. That's the exact same thing. In both of those countries, if you look at it, they would have to say, Ukraine would have to say, I would have to ask Ukraine, is the United States your friend? And how do you judge that? How, as I said with my buddy, when you met this girl, what was your life like? I was drinking and cavorting. I didn't have a dime saved in the bank. I was going nowhere, just partying all the time. And I would say, how are things now? I got a good job. I got a decent education. My buddy went to school, right? Went to college. I got some education. I got a good job. I got a home, car, and a pool table, and I can come home and watch the game. And I got he's a big Ravens fan, you know. I got my, what do you call it, man cave and all that. I look at his life and I'm like, you got a stable life, dude. You're all right. And he still comes home and drinks a beer or something every now and then, but his life's stable. Good, great. I asked Ukraine, hey, Ukraine, how's that working out? You got a nice stable home. You can come home, and he grew up in my dear friend, he grew up in a very, very poor neighborhood, a lot of crime, stuff like that. And he hadn't left that neighborhood. He was still living there when he met her, right? And he was going nowhere. Lives in a better, much, much better, nice middle class, working class neighborhood, making it. It's what you want in life, right? That girl saved his damn life, most likely. But in the same way, you look at Ukraine, man. And ultimately, you ask yourself, since you became associated with this new girlfriend or boyfriend, I guess, Uncle Sam, how's his life looking? It's destruction, total destruction. And the Russians are going to end up like they always do in Kiev. And ask yourself, in hindsight, if you could go backwards, Ukraine, would you have done the Maidan coup? Would you accepted those cookies from Victoria Nuland, or would you have said, "Whoa, no, 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 no. I think we'll just chill out here and be friends with the Russians. Keep your cookies, Victoria Nuland. We don't want 1.5 million dead and wounded. We don't want our infrastructure blown to pieces. We don't want to lose. They're losing everything. They're losing the Black Sea coast. They're losing everything. The Russians, as I've said all along, it's clear what's going to happen. The Russians are going to lean on them until they collapse. And the likelihood I see now, you know what the likelihood I see now? Civil war. And before, the version of civil war was the Banderites trying to take out the Russians, trying to take out the Eastern Europeans, right? That was what I saw. I mean, the Eastern Ukrainians. Now what I see is a civil war that involves the Banderites or various factions of the Banderites, but it's going to be nasty. It's going to be a Western. It's going to be the bad guys and the fascists fighting amongst themselves for supremacy. There's some nasty stuff going to end up happening, and some of these people are going to get killed, and they're going to be fighting internally in Western Ukraine. And the U.S. empire and the Europe is going to be in the middle of it. They're going to be trying to clean that up because it ain't going to be a civil war because in the manner that we thought it would be, that it was intended by the West, which were the Banderites versus the Eastern Europeans. It's going to be infighting amongst the fascists. That's what's going to happen. I see that coming. And to some extent, it wouldn't surprise me if Israel kind of fell apart in the same way. Israel's coming unglued. It's coming unglued because one of the things that's going on is you've got such extremists in government that even if Netanyahu loses and they want him out, the people behind him are even more extreme. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a country that has extremist in its DNA now, extremism in its DNA. The U.S. has baked extremism into the DNA of Israel to a point now where I don't see how they can come back to being a responsible government. Look, if you look at Ukraine, let me add this. One of the things that happened in Ukraine was this. They had these camps. Some of these people know these youth camps where they had people doing the unmentionable kind of salutes, singing hymns basically to Stepan Bandera. They were breeding little extremists everywhere, right? I'm sure a lot of you people followed it. Now let's go one further. What they do in Israel, they had little kids signing bombs. They had little kids singing songs about killing the Palestinians and all kind of extremist stuff. So they baked extremism into the cake by indoctrinating, like the Nazi brown shirts, indoctrinating these kids at a young age into hatred and violence and ethno-fascism against their neighbors and their community. Both countries did that. Why? Because they're all one. Because this is the U.S. empire. This is what the U.S. empire has done. This is what the U.S. empire does. And now that the U.S. empire is coming unglued, its plans and its vassals are coming unglued. You know why? Because they can do it in Ukraine. Russia's far too powerful. Far too powerful. They can do it in Ukraine, but Russia's going to put a stomp a mud hole in that crap. Russia's going to say, "Now you can do that, but not in our community, not in our region." Not that you tried. Barack Obama was right. Barack Obama said the problem is the Russians will always have escalatory dominance in that region. So you tried it in Russia, and it would work unless Russia said it won't work, and Russia said it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. Now let's go to the Middle East. It would work, except that the Muslim community, the Arab community, the Persian community, the Christian community, the entire Middle East community says it ain't happening in our region. We're sick and tired of it. We've had enough of it. So what's happening? Now you've got the Ansar Allah in Yemen who's saying, we'll just close down the Red Sea. See how you like that? You've got Iran sitting over there saying, and we can close off the Persian Gulf too if necessary. Do you really want, is this what you want? What happens if you're seeing what happens? They're closing off the Red Sea. You're seeing what happens. The U.S. is in deep and serious trouble. They're trying to put together an armada of ships. They've got ships all over the place, and they still can't stop Yemen. What are they going to do? Attack Yemen? Yemen's already said, look, if we get attacked, man, there's a whole lot of real good-looking Saudi and UAE infrastructure that we may, some of our cruise missiles may find our way. So So if you want the price of oil to go through the roof, if you want your economies to crash because we smack the crap out of Saudi Arabia and UAE's infrastructure, you just go ahead and you just pull up a chair because we're willing to. So the U.S. is in an issue, in a situation where it can't necessarily take the act it needs to be to try to prevent this. Meanwhile, if they go after Yemen, what do you think is going to happen to those U.S. bases in Syria, the illegal occupation bases in Syria, and the illegal occupation bases throughout the Middle East? They're going to come under intense fire. Some of those people will start coming home dead. So the U.S. is not in a position to expand this thing against Russia. Russia's far too powerful. And might I add, it's not in a position to expand this thing in the Middle East. Yemen is showing them, look what we can do. If we can do this, if this is all out war, what do you think Iran can do with Syria, with Hezbollah, with the Iraqis? What do you think can happen to us? This is where the oil comes out. This is where all of this oil comes out. Qatar, a lot of gas comes out. What's going to happen if there's all out war here? And now all of the ships are saying, basically, here's what I'll tell you right now, in case you don't know. This is what the ships are saying. The shipping lines are saying, not saying it, but they are saying it. We got no insurance. Our insurance companies won't pay because it's a war zone. We can't put these billion-dollar ships in the middle of a war zone, because if something happens to them, our insurance companies already said they ain't going to pay, right? So what's going to happen when all those super tankers can't go to UAE, can't go to Kuwait? That's the Red Sea. That's Iran's neck of the woods. What happens when those super tankers, 30% of the world's oil is cut off? What happens now? The Red Sea is cut off. Part of the Mediterranean's problems. The Persian Gulf shut down. What's going to happen to global financialized capital then? What's going to happen to all of those people who have all of this money in derivatives, who have all of this money in futures, oil futures, and energy futures? That's going to collapse. Gas, and all of it goes through the roof. Oh, might I add, is there anybody that sells oil and gas other than Qatar and the Middle East? Oh, that's right. I think Russia's got a lot. The price is going to go through the roof, and Russia's got nothing but oil and gas. They will make a fortune. The world will crawl to them begging for oil and gas, and that's all that Russia's got, nothing but oil and gas. So they'll be the richest country that you could ever imagine. They can't pump it out fast enough to sell it. Is that where you want to be? And that's what we're on the verge of. So the United States, in both areas are in a sticky wicket. And it's the exact same dynamics and the exact same scenario to make Ukraine and Russia an imperial military, Ukraine and Israel to be imperial military outposts, so they could harass the Russia in one instance and the Muslim world and the Middle East and the all of the oil in the region in the instance of Israel. And in both instances, they ended up bringing the most extreme factions in the country to power, and now they can't control them. Now they're out of control. That's what happens. You got a mad dog. When you got a mad dog, that mad dog's going to bite the person. If you've got an attack dog is trained. You say, sit, it sits. That's Olaf Scholz. That's Rishi Sunak. They're attack dogs. When they say dogs sit, they sit. When they say shine my shoes, they shine their shoes. When you got an attack dog, a mad frothing at the mouth dog, when that dog gets out, when you take that muzzle off, the first leg he sees, he's going to chomp down on it. If it happens to be yours, so be it. Because he's not a rational actor. A mad dog don't act in good faith. He bites whatever he can. He's not a rational actor. They've created mad dogs. Smotrich, Ben Gvir, the right sector, Svoboda, those people aren't sitting around making rational decisions. They're not sitting around reading Plato's Republic, trying to determine what makes a good and honest man, and are they doing things for the right reason? Why do we do things? Why do human beings try to be just and moral? What is the definition of a moral man? That ain't what Smotrich, Ben Gvir, and the right sector is doing. They're just saying we're superior, so we got to act. That's what you got. That's what you created in both instances. Isn't it amazing? When you look at Israel and you look at Ukraine, I'm sure there are people watching right now and they could look at it and see, man, the dynamics are identical. I've never thought about that, Garland. All right, let's sit here now, and we shall look, if I can ever get the hell back to the beginning. We're going to look and see. All right, we're going. Sparky says, remember the liberty. Sparky's always on the money. Exactly. Because they knew they could get away with it. How about Raphael Lagundo? Gee, give us your take on the Boston mayor no white party. Brother, explain to us why staff did not say we cannot do this. Is common sense gone? Bro, yes, common sense is gone. It's just stupidity stuff. That's where these people are now. Idiots. You know, oh, a no white party. It's absurd. It's preposterous. Let me ask you this. What does that serve? What sense does that serve? How does that make the world better? You know what it is? It is a form of virtue signaling. Look at me. I'm now so woke. I'm so woke. I'm like woke. I'm woke so that every advertisement now has a mixed couple, a gay person, and then 4 or 5 people of every ethnicity. I got an Asian. That's how woke I am, right? And now this person says, I'm so woke, I don't even allow white people into it. That's how woke. You think you're woke. I'm so woke, I don't even allow white people in the room. That's how woke I am. It's virtue signaling to see who's the wokest. From now on, only trans people will be allowed in our party. Next, what are they going to have next? Trans only, whatever. It is the ultimate. It is the nature. It is the natural path of where this virtue signaling and wokeism would go. That's where it would end up ludicrous. That's naturally where it would be ludicrous. And so it makes sense to me of where this kind of crazy virtue signaling gets to the point where it's farcical. All right, let's see. Somewhere down here, I think we may have, I'm going to get to them sooner. Oh. So Sparky says, make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Jews and Arabs got along fine. There you go, Sparky. How about Injun Atik says, if two fish are fighting in a river, a long-legged Englishman has just passed by. I like that. I like that. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what they do. That's what imperialism does, ain't it? All right, let's look at Rockfin. No tips over at Rockfin, so we'll read. The neocons believe in creative destruction. That is the sign of a ghoul. They know how to make money on crisis and human suffering. The fascist tendencies are coming from the US and the EU. The allure will disintegrate as these countries show their true colors as they brutalize their own countries. You are correct, my friend. You are correct. This person says, Garland, when they say wokeism, they're calling black folks the N-word at Garland Nixon. Look, I'll end by saying this about wokeism. It's simple as this. The whatever you want to call this monster, imperialism is a word you could use, fascism, whatever. It expresses itself in three ways verbally. It's all one, but when we got to use words to describe it. So this is what this is the word we'll use. Foreign policy, militarism, call it neoconservatism, right? Economic policy, we'll call it neoliberalism, right? Cultural policy, we'll call it wokeism. It's all the same monster. Those are just the three ways it expresses itself. And the only reason I'm going to call it that and use those words is because I don't have another way other than words to express and explain what it is. And that's the way I'm going to do it. We all know what the hell it is. Just like when you look at a flower, if you never heard the word flower in your world, you know what you were looking at. But once somebody gives you a word to describe it, then you start saying it uses photosynthesis and it takes you an hour to describe a damn flower. But you instantly look at it and know what it is. We look at this thing and we know what it is, but we got to say neoliberalism, wokeism, neoconservatism. It's all the same thing. It's expansionism. We can say imperialism, whatever you want to use. You can say globalism if you're a conservative. You can use whatever, but we know what the hell it is, don't we? All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. So here's where I am. Here's where I am. Don't forget, go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. It's scrolling across the bottom, and you can join for free. And if they throw me off of YouTube, guess what? I'll be right there, and everything is there. And if you choose, if you can afford it, $14.99 a month to become a subscriber to Rockfin, it will be highly appreciated if you can afford it. Patreon.com/Garland Nixon. PayPal, garland@gmail.com. Buy me a coffee is great because you can just say, buy Garland a coffee. $5. How many you want to buy? Blah, whatever. And you can become a subscriber and do it monthly if you want, but you don't have to. Certainly, my what do you call it? Cash App info is there. So if you can afford to help the channel, fine. If not, just do me a favor. Smash the like button brutally, viciously, with malice and a forethought. Attack the like button to make sure we can try to trick the algorithm and share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace. I'm out. Oh, by the way, this Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, guess who's going to be on? Scott Ritter. And then Jody Brar is going to be on Fridays at 9. I love Jody. She's awesome, isn't she? Jody Brar is Fridays at 9. Scott Ritter is going to be Thursday this week. So Merry Xmas. And I got Scott on Thursday, Jody on Friday. We're going to have a fun blast. Peace. I'm out.